Well, Labour MP Ian Murray joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary.
Can you just outline in a nutshell what this plan is?
Well, a nutshell it might be quite difficult, but actually the bottom line here is that the legal position is that the UK will leave the European Union in law on the 31st of October, and therefore that date has to be changed in law, which is a legislative move, so legislation will have to be passed through the House of Commons. That, in a nutshell, is where we are.
But it means the opposition trying to seize control of the order paper, which is controlled by the government. There's some real difficulties ahead here. This is not an easy procedure by any means.
Well, it's not an easy procedure, but you're right. Governments tend to control the entirety of parliamentary business, so backbenchers are going to have to take back control, if I can use that phrase, by finding a mechanism to allow some time to be allocated to bring forward a piece of legislation that changes that 31st of October date. It has been done before. You may remember, your listeners may remember, that Oliver Letwin and Yvette Cooper brought forward a private bill and passed it through both houses of Parliament earlier this year to compel the Prime Minister to seek that extension when the date was the 29th of March. So it can be done, and we don't have any legislation at this stage to pin it on, but there are procedural ways that we can get that order paper.
Well, and that's your difficulty, isn't it? We spoke to constitutional expert Alan Trench earlier, who said that this was a Heath Robinson mechanism with little chance of success.
Well, everything's got some kind of degree of success, and I think this is the most sensible way forward. Indeed, you've heard from Ian Blackford and Dominic Grieve there. There is a majority in the House, quite a large majority, to stop a no deal. And if people want to stop a no deal, then they're going to have to coalesce into one group outside party politics to be able to get those numbers to pass something through Parliament.
But the reality is that government...
Lots of procedural shenanigans.
Government controls the time. We're already being told that there'll be a budget statement next week, which wasn't expected. We're being told that there might be a very lengthy statement from Michael Gove on this Operation Yellowhammer, these procedures that are being put into place if there's a no-deal Brexit. The government, in essence, can actually just talk for a week and not allow the opposition the prospect of tabling any of these motions.
Well, we do have a mechanism called a Standing Order 24 emergency debate mechanism, which we could use to at least get a motion on the floor of the House of Commons that might be able to get us some time. You're right, though, to suggest that Parliament only actually sits for 7 days next week before it's supposed to break up for conference recess. That will have to come to the House of Commons on the basis of a motion. That motion could be voted down, of course, to ensure we don't have a conference recess, which might give us some more time. And then, of course, you have the nuclear options of votes of no confidence and to try and bring the government down. Although the difficulty with those, which is what has transpired from the talks, across-party talks led by Labour yesterday, is we could end up in a general election, which is something we're trying to avoid, because that general election would happen over the 31st of October. So
but Labour wants a general election, though.
Well, certainly do, but we have to look at the time frames of that. You can't possibly have one before the 31st of October unless everything fell into place on the first 2 days of Parliament, and as you've suggested, that's not likely to happen. And you wouldn't want one over the 31st of October, or Boris Johnson gets the suspension of Parliament that he's been looking for.
Does it pain you that Jeremy Corbyn doesn't have the support? He personally, it seems, doesn't have the support for these other mechanisms, like a vote of confidence, where he potentially could take over as caretaker Prime Minister if he was able to bring Boris Johnson down?
Well, that's for others to answer, but the key thing here is all about the parliamentary mathematics, and there's two things that fall from that at the moment. We need Conservative backbench members of Parliament to vote with the opposition in order to win votes in Parliament, which is what's happened before, which is why we haven't left the European Union as was scheduled on the 29th of March.
They might well vote for it. They might vote against a no deal, but what they will not vote for, it seems, is the idea of Jeremy Corbyn becoming caretaker Prime Minister and forcing this general election that Labour says it wants. That's Labour's problem, isn't it? The lack of popularity that your leader has in the Commons.
And I think that's why the cross-party talks yesterday have concluded on using the legislative way forward, because regardless of what happens in terms of votes of no confidence, general elections, temporary prime ministers, governments of national unity, you still have to change the law, and therefore all our focus should be on that. And that's why I was very disappointed that Jo Swinson, the Liberal Democrats, ruled out instantly that they wouldn't work with Jeremy Corbyn in that nuclear scenario.
Well, she knew the numbers.
What should happen?
She knew the numbers.
What should happen? Well, what should happen, because we know Jeremy Corbyn doesn't have the numbers, I think your suggestion is correct, is that it should have been made very clear that we would give Jeremy Corbyn the first crack at trying to form that temporary administration, but if he wasn't able to do so, then all the effort should go behind trying to form some kind of government with someone who can gain that confidence of the House. Everything's off the table. All the normal rules have to be set aside, because we have to stop no deal come hell or high water. That's the only focus we should have, and any mechanism we can do to do that we must pursue with vigour.
Is your plan, as Number 10 is suggesting, to sabotage Brexit?
It's not about sabotaging Brexit at all. It's about saving the country from itself in terms of self-harm that it will have to our economy and the future.
But does Labour still have a position where it will deliver Brexit, albeit not a no deal?
Labour's position is to deliver a final say confirmatory vote with the option to remain and to have a general election to try and deliver that particular process.
So Labour does want to sabotage Brexit?
But what we need, no, I think we want to give it back to the people, to give the people a final say and try and break the parliamentary impasse and to stop the country going down this road that will have an impact for generations to come. There's no credible analysis that says that any deal or no deal is good for the country, and therefore it's incredibly important for the people to have a final say on this, to get this back to the people so they can decide what they want for their future.
Labour MP Ian Murray, thank you.